Success is not determined by your IQ score or your level of education. It is dictated entirely by the size of your thinking. Hello, friends, dreamers, and builders. Welcome back to the show. Today, we are going to do something a little different. We are going to step into a time machine, go back to 1959, and pull off the shelf a book that, I'm not exaggerating here, might just be the skeleton key to every locked door you've ever encountered in your professional and personal life. We are diving deep, and I mean really deep, into the first section of David Schwartz's absolute classic, The Magic of Thinking Big. Now I know what some of you might be thinking. 1959? That's ancient history. The world has changed. We have the internet, AI, globalization. And you're right, the tools have changed. But human nature? The architecture of the human mind? That hasn't changed one bit. If anything, the noise of the modern world has made the lessons in this book even more critical. We are going to spend the next hour or so dissecting the first 66 pages of this masterpiece, and by the time we're done, I want you to look at your own ambitions and ask yourself a terrifying but necessary question. Am I the reason I'm not winning? Let's start with the premise. It's a premise that Schwartz lays out with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. He asks a question that haunts the halls of every HR department and every boardroom in the world. Why do some people shoot to the top while others, who seem just as qualified, just as nice, just as hardworking, scrape by in mediocrity? We have been sold a lie, my friends. We've been told since kindergarten that success is a mixture of high IQ, elite education, and a sprinkle of luck. We think it's about raw processing power. But Schwartz stops us right there. He says, no. Success is not an IQ score. Success is a mindset. He tells this story, and I love this story because it's so mundane yet so revealing, about a salesman named Harry. Now, picture a standard sales meeting. You've got a vice president of marketing standing at the front of the room, and he points out Harry. Harry isn't flashy. Harry isn't a genius. But Harry made $60,000 last year. Now, remember, this is the 1950s, so $60,000 is an absolute fortune. It's CO money. Then the VP points to the rest of the room. The average guy in that room made $12,000. So, Harry is earning 5 times what his peers are earning. The VP decides to do a human audit. He looks at Harry's stats. Is Harry 5 times smarter? No. Personnel tests showed he was average. Did Harry work 5 times harder? No. In fact, Harry took more vacation time than anyone else. Was he healthier? Did he have a better territory? No and no. So, what is the variable? If you control for intelligence, health, and work ethic, what is left? The VP concluded that the only difference, the literal only difference, was the size of Harry's thinking. Harry expected to sell 5 times more. He viewed himself as a $60,000 man, so he operated at a $60,000 frequency. The other guys viewed themselves as $12,000 men, so they subconsciously capped their effort and their creativity at the $12,000 mark. Why does this matter to you? It matters because it destroys the excuse that you aren't smart enough or talented enough. It suggests that your output is directly correlated to your self-conception. If you think small, you will get small results. It is a law of physics in the psychological realm. Schwartz then moves to a concept that I think is even more relevant today than it was back then, the myth of the crowded top. We live in a society that constantly tells us to be realistic. Don't aim too high, you'll just get disappointed. There are too many chiefs and not enough Indians. We hear that all the time, right? Schwartz says this is absolute nonsense. He quotes an HR executive who breaks down the job market in a way that will blow your mind. This executive says, "Look, if I post a job for a $10,000 a year salary, which is an entry-level average wage back then, I will get 50 to 250 applicants. I'll be drowning in resumes. It's a bloodbath of competition. But then he says, if I post a job for a $50,000 a year salary, a leadership role, a high-stakes position, I practically have to go out and beg people to apply. Think about the logic there. The competition is fiercest at the bottom. The bottom is where everyone is fighting for scraps because everyone assumes they belong at the bottom. But the top? The C-suite? The world-class level? It's practically empty. There is plenty of room at the top because so few people dare to think big enough to place themselves there. We are terrified of the altitude, so we stay in the valley where it's crowded and miserable. Schwartz is telling us, go to the top. The traffic is lighter. So, we've established that thinking big is the differentiator. But how does it actually work? Is it magic? Is it just wishing upon a star? No. Schwartz gets into the mechanics of belief, and he describes belief as a thermostat. This is a crucial distinction. Belief is not wishful thinking. You can't stand at the base of a mountain and wish it to move. That's a fantasy. But if you believe you can move it, if you truly, deeply believe it is possible, your mind goes to work. Belief flips a switch in your brain. When you believe, I can do this, your reticular activating system, your subconscious, starts scanning the environment for the how. He gives this incredible example of a young woman who wanted to start a mobile home sales company. She had $3,000 in savings. That's it. Now the experts, and notice how the experts are usually the people who haven't done the thing, told her she needed at least $20,000 and that the market was too competitive. A realist would have quit right there. But she had the belief. She didn't have the money, but she had the belief. Because she believed she could do it, she didn't accept the lack of capital as a stop sign, she saw it as a puzzle. She went out and pitched her belief to investors. She got the money. She pitched her belief to a manufacturer. She got the inventory on credit. In her first year, she did $1 million in sales. Here is the why it matters moment. The how to always comes after the belief. Most of us wait for the plan before we believe. We say, show me the road map, and then I'll believe I can make the trip. Schwartz says, no. Believe you can make the trip, and your mind will draw the map. If you don't believe, your mind shuts down. It doesn't look for solutions, it looks for excuses. And speaking of minds looking for excuses, let's talk about the thought factory. This is one of my favorite analogies in the entire book. Schwartz visualizes the human mind as a factory with two foremen in charge of production. On one side you have Mr. Triumph. On the other side you have Mr. Defeat. These two guys are obedient workers. They will do exactly what you tell them to do. If you wake up in the morning and say, today is going to be a rough day, I'm not ready for this presentation, you are snapping your fingers at Mr. Defeat. He jumps into action. He starts manufacturing thoughts to prove you right. He reminds you of the time you stuttered in a meeting 3 years ago. He points out that it's raining. He makes your stomach hurt. He produces a full inventory of reasons why you will fail. But if you wake up and say, I'm going to crush this, you signal Mr. Triumph. And Mr. Triumph starts pulling files from the archives of your brain that show your wins. He reminds you of your preparation. He generates creative solutions. The terrifying part is that most of us are giving 90% of the workload to Mr. Defeat. We are literally manufacturing our own failure. We are the architects of our own insecurity. Schwartz argues that you have to fire Mr. Defeat. Or at least stop giving him shifts. This leads us directly into the second major chunk of the book, and this is where Schwartz puts on his doctor's coat. He diagnoses the entire human population with a disease. He calls it excusitis, the disease of failure. He says that if you look at successful people and unsuccessful people, the difference isn't just their bank account. It's their relationship with excuses. The more successful the person, the fewer excuses they make. The mediocre person, however, has a Rolodex of reasons why they can't, why they didn't, and why they won't. Excusitis is insidious because it starts as a shield. We use it to save face. I didn't get the promotion because I didn't play office politics. Or, I didn't start the business because my health isn't great. It makes us feel better in the moment. But here is the danger: if you tell a lie enough times, you start to believe it. The excuse hardens. It becomes your reality. Schwartz breaks excusitis down into 4 main strains, but in this first section of the book, he focuses heavily on health, intelligence, and age. Let's break these down, because I guarantee you, you are suffering from at least one of these right now. First, health excusitis. I'm not feeling well. I have a bad back. I have low energy. Now, obviously, genuine medical emergencies exist. Schwartz isn't telling you to ignore a heart attack. But he is talking about the chronic complainer. He tells a story about a guy he met who had a heart condition. This guy was 30 years old. He quit working, sat around, and waited to die. But here's the kicker: 4 different doctors told him there was nothing physically wrong with his heart. It was all psychosomatic. But because he believed he was sick, he lived a sick life. Schwartz contrasts this with a guy he met on a plane. This man had an artificial heart valve. He had been through a life-threatening surgery. You could literally hear the valve ticking in his chest, tick, tick, tick. But this man was vibrant. He was planning to go to law school. He was traveling. He told Schwartz, "I'm just glad to be alive." Here is the contrast. The healthy man who felt sick was paralyzed. The sick man who felt capable was unstoppable. Schwartz gives us a prescription for health excusitis, and it's harsh medicine. He says, stop talking about your health. Just stop. Every time you complain about your headache or your bad knee, you are fertilizing a negative seed. You are boring the people around you, and you are convincing yourself that you are weak. He says, refuse to worry about your health. Worry creates stress, stress creates illness. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. He brings up the story of John, the one-armed golfer. John lost an arm in World War II. Now, losing an arm is a pretty valid excuse to never play sports again. But John became a champion golfer. When asked how he did it, he said something that should be tattooed on the inside of our eyelids. A positive attitude with one arm is better than a negative attitude with 2. Think about that. How many of us have 2 arms, 2 legs, a working brain, and we are doing less than John? It's not the equipment, folks. It's the operator. Now let's move to the second strain, intelligence excusitis. This is the "I'm not smart enough" excuse. We are obsessed with IQ in our culture. We think the guy with the 160 IQ is destined to rule the world. Schwartz says, dead wrong. In fact, he argues that high intelligence can sometimes be a liability if it's accompanied by a negative attitude. A high IQ person who sees all the ways a project can fail will never start. A moderate IQ person who believes they can succeed will figure it out along the way. He uses the phrase, stickability is 95% of ability. I love that. Stickability. Schwartz challenges us to rethink what thinking actually is. He says there are 2 ways to use your brain. You can use it as a recording device, or you can use it as a creative instrument. The person who suffers from intelligence excusitis usually views the brain as a recording device. They pride themselves on knowing facts. They are walking encyclopedias. But they don't create anything. They just store data. The creative thinker, the big thinker, uses their brain to solve problems. They ask, how can I make this better? Rather than, what is the definition of this? Schwartz poses a question. Am I using my brain to make history, or just to record history made by others? That hits hard, doesn't it? Are you a creator or an archivist of other people's success? The cure for intelligence excusitis is simple: never underestimate your own intelligence, and never overestimate the intelligence of others. You don't need to be a genius. You just need to be interested, enthusiastic, and willing to think. Finally, let's tackle the third strain, age excusitis. I'm too old. Or, conversely, I'm too young. Let's look at the too old argument first. Schwartz tells the story of Cecil. Cecil is 40 years old. He wants to switch careers, maybe start a business, but he sighs and says, I'm 40. I'm washed up. It's too late to start over. Schwartz pulls out the math. And the math is undeniable. He says, look, a productive working life usually spans from age 20 to age 70. That's a 50-year window. If Cecil is 40, he has worked for 20 years. That means he has used up 40% of his productive life. But he still has 30 years left. That is 60%. Imagine you have a cake. You've eaten 40% of it. Would you look at the remaining 60%, the bigger piece, and throw it in the trash saying, well, the cake is basically gone? No. That's insanity. But that is exactly what we do with our lives. We let the past 20 years dictate the future 30 years. Schwartz says, look at the future, not the past. If you are 40 or 50, you have decades of potential left. Don't let the calendar lie to you. And on the flip side, the too young excuse. I can't be a leader, I'm only 23. Schwartz points to history. Alexander the Great. Napoleon. Modern tech founders. Age has no bearing on ability unless you convince yourself that it does. If you act mature, if you act confident, people will treat you as a leader regardless of the date on your birth certificate. So, we have the premise: success is a choice, not a trait. We have the mechanism: belief is the thermostat. We have the enemy, excusitis, the health, intelligence, and age traps that keep us small. But how do we put this all together? What is the practical application? Schwartz introduces the concept of the self-development laboratory. He tells us to view the world as a lab. Every interaction you have is an experiment. He wants us to observe people. Next time you are at work, or at a family gathering, look at the successful people and look at the unsuccessful people. Don't just judge them, study them. Listen to how the successful person talks. Do they talk about ideas? Do they talk about the future? Do they talk about how we can do this? Now listen to the unsuccessful person. Do they talk about people? Do they talk about the past? Do they complain about their health? Do they explain why things can't be done? Schwartz says that if you simply observe, you will see the principles of this book playing out in real time. You will see that the people at the top aren't superhumans. They are just ordinary people who have developed the habit of thinking big. And the people at the bottom aren't cursed. They are just suffering from a bad case of excusitis. He wraps up this first section with a quote from Disraeli that is just hauntingly beautiful. Asterisk. Life is too short to be little. Asterisk. Think about that for a second. We are on this spinning rock for a blink of an eye in cosmic time. Why on earth would you spend that brief flicker of time being little? Why would you spend it worrying about what could go wrong? Why would you spend it making excuses for why you aren't living the life you want? The tragedy of the little life isn't that you fail. The tragedy is that you never really start. You let Mr. Defeat run the factory. You let the invisible heart condition keep you in the chair. You let the calendar tell you it's too late. Schwartz is handing us a permission slip. He is telling us that we have the power to fire the negative foreman. We have the power to rip up the excuses. We have the power to set the thermostat to whatever temperature we want. But here is the catch, and there is always a catch. You have to go first. The world will not treat you like a giant until you see yourself as a giant. The $50,000 job won't come to you if you think like a $10,000 applicant. The bridge contract won't go to the firm that thinks it's too small. You have to believe it in the dark, before the spotlight hits you. So, here is my challenge to you for this week, based on these first 66 pages. I want you to catch yourself. Catch yourself when you say, I can't because. Catch yourself when you start listing your symptoms. Catch yourself when you say, I'm not smart enough for that. And when you catch yourself, I want you to flip the switch. Call in Mr. Triumph. Ask yourself, how would a person who makes 10 times more than me handle this situation? Because remember, there is plenty of room at the top. The view is better, the pay is better, and the crowd is smaller. All you have to do is decide that you belong there. The magic of thinking big isn't about magic tricks. It's about the magic of the human will. It's about the realization that you are the thinker of your thoughts, and your thoughts create your world. So stop recording history. Go out there and create it. Life is too short to be little. Thank you for listening. Now go think big.